Welcome to Stepping Off the Path. This podcast is about the moments when life stops fitting, when something becomes intolerable or impossible to ignore, and the way forward isn't clear anymore. Today's conversation is about what happens when certainty disappears, when identity is shaken, and when you're asked to meet life in a completely different way than you expected. It's about listening to yourself when the stakes feel high, about mindset, support, and the quiet decisions that shape what comes next. If you're in a season where you don't have a clear plan, but you know the old way can't continue, this conversation will meet you there. Let's begin. And a quick note, if I sound rather overexcited when I introduce Suzanne, it's because I had just fluffed my introduction to her for the third time, I believe. So I was laughing away to myself. So that's why I may sound a little overexcited when I introduce her. But Suzanne is amazing, so she deserves a high level of excitement. Enjoy. Before we begin, a quick note. This episode includes conversations about serious illness, brain surgery, pregnancy, and the emotional reality of navigating uncertainty. We don't go into graphic medical detail, but some listeners may find parts of this episode tender. Please take care of yourself while listening. Pause if you need to, and reach out for support if anything this brings up feels heavy. Welcome to Stepping Off the Path. My guest today is Suzanne Spencer. Suzanne spent over a decade as a broadcast journalist, telling other people's stories and reporting on moments that changed lives. In 2021, she received a phone call that changed the trajectory of her own life. A brain tumour diagnosis, and 2 surgeries later, Suzanne found herself navigating not just recovery, but a profound shift in identity, pace, and what mattered most. Today, Suzanne is going to share her story with us and what has happened since that point in her life. Suzanne, I'm grateful you're here. Welcome to Stepping Off the Path.
Thank you so much for having me. What an honor to be with you and anything to brighten the day here in Wisconsin, where we have about 6 inches of snow on the ground and it's
Oh,
very
wow.
cold.
Oh,
So I
wow.
love being able to talk with you and have this be a bright spot of the day.
Thank you. Thank you. So, just to go back a little bit in time, before 2021, you spent years as the journalist on the other end of the phone, telling other people's stories. How did you see your life and your identity back then?
I was so wrapped up in building my career as a TV reporter and anchor. It is an industry that I often say you have to practically beg to get your first job. And so for years, I built an identity, a reputation for being a trusted journalist. And for me, I think my identity, when you're young and you have the time and the energy to devote all into your career, that's what I did. So I lived in South Bend, Indiana, right after I graduated from college. And I worked all the weekends, the holidays, the long hours, and moved my way up through the journalism ranks. And here, oftentimes you start out by shooting and editing all your own stuff, presenting your own stuff live on air, and then it gets a little bit different as you progress. So oftentimes then is once you kind of got some experience under your belt, you'll then work with a photographer where obviously they have the expertise in the shooting and the editing, and you have the expertise in the reporting. And so for me, I quickly realized my goal was to become an anchor. I always loved reporting, but my goal was to be on that anchor desk and be that trusted voice in the community. And my career eventually took me to Milwaukee, which was a really desired market for me to work in. It was a really strong storytelling market. And, I was so proud of what I had built and kind of the person I had become through putting myself all in to my career and really it became my identity.
Wow, just hearing you share that then, I got this sort of dual feeling of excitement but really tiring.
Mhm.
Like, all the days, all the weekends, it's like, wow, that it just sounds a little bit tiring as well as
I know.
exciting. Yeah.
You know, I was just thinking this morning, people always ask me, "Do you miss TV?" You know, it's been about 18 months since I left.
Mm.
And today, with 6 inches of snow on the ground and we have, like, -20 degrees in a couple days, my mind flashed back to those days of reporting in the snow and the cold and just getting pelted in the face with all the snow and the craziness, and it's like, "You know what? No, I don't miss those days." So, the job was certainly 2 ends of the spectrum, right? You were given the opportunity to do some really awesome stuff. I mean, I was on a naval warship. I started a cold case series. I was given creative freedom to do some really awesome stories and make an impact. But then
Mm.
you're also constantly in people's toughest moments. I mean,
Yeah.
you are not really proactive. You are reactive in most situations to what's happening in the world around us.
Mm.
And that can drag on a person and really
Yeah.
impact them mentally and physically.
I'm just curious, actually, just thinking about you sharing that. Did you get much support in that? It's pretty deep stuff and
Mhm.
really hard-hitting things. Like, how was the support around you in that environment?
I would say it changed. It was there if you needed it.
Mhm.
But most often, I would say there was camaraderie among people who were in it. And so I would
Yeah.
often talk with the people who knew what it was like to cover those stories.
Mm.
After a really tough day, man, I'm thinking of you today. Like I would get a message like that. I'm sure that wasn't an easy story to cover.
Mm.
Um, but there, as I kind of progressed and got to a place with more resources, there were like, mental health resources that were available,
Mm.
and I certainly tapped into those when I needed them. Um, but it shifted my perspective. Just a lot of people get jaded in the industry because you're
Mm.
around
Mm.
tough news stories every day, and I would say sometimes I would fall into that path, but I tried really hard not to, and to maintain that there was always a silver lining in a
Mm.
world of tough news.
And just thinking back to the moment when you received that phone call, the one where the news was actually about you, what shifted in that moment?
I think when you're in the midst of a life-changing moment, it's hard to have perspective right then. And for
Mm.
me, I immediately started down that reporter to-do list. So it was like, "Okay, gotta find the doctor. How quickly can I get in? Gotta call my boss and tell him I'm not working tomorrow. Need to tell my family." And just went down this checklist of, well, I gotta tell the people closest to me and create a game plan. And I think
Mm.
that was immediately what shifted in the moment. But it was this crazy thing where I thought, I have a brain tumor. I don't feel any different. I don't look any different.
Mm.
And so how it was just odd to make sense of that in the moment. Like, what do I do? I asked my doctor, like, can I travel?
Mm.
Should I not have this glass of wine? Like, just the
Yeah.
the silly, like, everyday things because you get this news and it's like, well, do I need to change anything immediately? And the answer was pretty much like, just take it easy and we'll figure out what's next once you meet with your doctor.
Mm. So what do you think was the hardest to comprehend?
Oh, what was the hardest to comprehend in that moment, would you say?
Mm. Yeah, yeah, and then I guess beyond that as well, you've alluded to some of those what might think of mundane questions, "Can I do this? Can I do that?" Was there anything that stood out as particularly hard to comprehend?
I think what was as I when I saw the first picture of my brain, it was quickly obvious that millimeters mattered. So
Wow.
it truly was a gift that I knew about it and that I didn't have more serious symptoms. So
Right.
that was the most kind of gut checking moment, I would say, once I saw that picture and heard my doctor say, "Well, this you're gonna be okay." Um, which, there's no guarantee. But
Mm,
there was a reassurance that, okay, we know about it, we know where it is. There wasn't a life, threatening, uh, characteristic to it at that very moment when we discovered it.
mm, mm. Yeah, I can only imagine the I'm looking at a screen. This is my brain. I can see a tumor. It's insane, but the doctor's telling me it's okay. And holding the two, I haven't been through that. It's just imagining holding the two things together. Um, and yeah, and how you found that.
Yeah, it was instantly you have this sort of connection, right, with the doctor who has your life in his hands, so to speak.
Mm,
Um, but then at the same time, the reporter brain in me was like, "Well, should we get a second opinion?
mm,
Because you can't just have anyone operate on your head." And at that point, I didn't even know what my options were. So
mm,
once we met with the doctor, I think that it became obvious, okay, I based on the location, they could access it through my nose, which was this
wow.
newer. Yes, this procedure where they could go in through the nose, and essentially go through a thin bone to access that tumor, and they wouldn't have to do a traditional, approach where they would have to, like, cut your skull and that whole
Mm,
process. And so, for me, that seemed like a huge, advantage given that, I was on TV for a living, the recovery was shorter,
wow.
and so he was already kind of proposing the best case scenario for us. And so we just had a decision to make, and that was, do we go forward with it now, knowing what it was capable of, or do we wait until I have more serious symptoms down the road?
Mm. I hear you say that, and I kind of go, well, why would you wait? But
Mhm.
obviously, if you're given the option, there is a possible reason to wait. So what were the decision in that, I guess, to wait or not to wait, really?
Yeah. We wanted to have a family, and so we were
Ah,
told, like, that would not be impacted if we went forward with the procedure. Um, it might also not be impacted if we didn't go forward with the
right.
procedure. But I think in our perspective, we felt like if we could reduce the potential threat of what this could do, we would like to move forward and go ahead with starting our family and thinking about moving past
Mm,
this. And so it was a pretty quick decision. My husband and I sat down, told our family the plan, and of course, everyone's, "What? You have a brain, tumor? You're having brain surgery? Like, are you gonna die? Aren't you so scared?" And all these
mm,
questions started coming at us. And for me, it was so funny because everyone was reacting to me. They were scared. They wanted to
yeah.
know that I would be okay. And
Mm,
I didn't know if I would be okay, but I was just so grateful to know about it and to be able to develop a game plan. So that was really like when I started getting all these reactions from others, that was really the first big step in my own perspective shift, which was
mm,
that I didn't want to be afraid of this. I wanted to be grateful for it, grateful that we knew about it.
mm,
And so I started to speak about it that way. When I told my viewers, in Milwaukee that I was gonna be having a brain tumor, I said, "I'm so grateful that I know about this."
wow.
And and so that's how I've chosen to see it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just blown away by you explaining that because I've done a lot of personal development work, and people I know, even in that sphere, can take years to get to that sort of mindset to see the gift. And I love the way you've explained it, and I would hope that I would have a similar response. But was that a mindset, do you think you'd always had, or was it really brought to the surface by force, I guess, out of the situation? Because that's really quite something.
It's funny, I have been asked before, "Was that something that you felt like was inherent, or did someone
Mm,
teach you that?" And essentially what you're asking, and I would say maybe a little bit of both. I think that I didn't wanna live my life afraid of this big thing. That
Yeah.
wasn't gonna be good for my health and my outcome, and so through conversations with my husband, he's a big mindset guy. He has always
Mhm.
believed in having the right mindset, and so we had a lot of conversations about how we would tell people and how we would talk about it, and really it was a conversation with him where I said, "I just don't know if I wanna tell the world that I'm having this brain surgery." Like, if I go back on TV and
Mhm.
something is different, like, they tell me nothing is really gonna be different, but, what if something is different? What if I act funny or sound funny and people will say, "Well, she had brain surgery." And
Right.
he said, "But what if you do tell people that you are having it and it helps people? What if someone takes a nugget from your story of like, wow, you listened to your intuition. You knew in your gut that something was wrong. Imagine the good that could come from it." And so
Huh.
that conversation really fueled my perspective shift. And, when you're in the throes of it, like I mentioned, I don't think that happened immediately. You're scheduling doctor's appointments and moving through the motions of trying to figure out what's next. But it was pretty immediate for me. And
Mm.
I, it's funny, I've heard someone say, not even in relation to this, um, it's simple, but it's not easy. And I think that's true. For me, it was
Mm.
pretty simple, like, change your mindset.
Yeah.
But it wasn't easy all the time, but that was the decision I made, and so I tried to stick with that through my diagnosis and through kind of subsequently more
Mm.
challenges that would come later on.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like we should take a moment to say props for your husband because to have that support and that person in your corner and even delivering the news to family and friends, like that's huge. That support is amazing. So I'm just so thrilled to hear that you have that as well. Did you feel almost like you wanted to look after other people when you told them your diagnosis? Like I would think about telling your parents or immediate people around there. Was there any of that sort of feeling or like protecting them at all?
A little bit. When I told them all in an email, of course, which is, like, probably what no one wants to be told that, "Oh, your daughter has a brain tumor?" in an email, but my family emailed all the time, big
Yeah.
stuff, little stuff, and I just thought, "How am I gonna tell 15 immediate family members,
Wow.
on my side, plus 8 on my husband's side?" And so email felt like the easiest way.
Hmm.
Um and so I would say people there was a bit of, like, protecting myself in it, like,
Yep.
I told them, and then I relied on my husband to communicate the major things, and I think anyone who's been through something knows, like, there's just some sort of channel of communication that starts to exist, whether it's family member, like a Caring Bridge site or social media, something happens where people figure out a way to get their updates. And
Hmm.
so I just relied on my husband, and that was um, helpful. But then it
Yeah.
was equally helpful that people weren't afraid to come to me and to say, "Are you okay? Are
Yeah.
you doing okay?" And
Mm.
so I did appreciate those people who said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, we understand, Paul. My husband is the communicator, but you're the one going through it.
Yeah.
So how are you doing?" And
Yeah.
I think it's always a balance of both.
Mm. Mm. And it's like, I'm hearing this has happened. I've got the diagnosis. You've shared it. I think it's amazing as well that you shared it with the audience. You're on TV, but with illness, serious things happen, right? And it can have a way of stripping life back very quickly. So, was there anything that happened for you, maybe when you progressed with treatment? Was there any loss of anything? Did you feel like you lost a version of who you were or trust in your body or anything like that as things progressed?
I think I gained everything. I think that for me, it wasn't what I lost, it was what I knew. I knew that I had the brain tumor diagnosis, and
Mhm.
so I could develop a game plan. I now have this big perspective shift of I was 29 years old, and
Wow.
nothing is certain about your health, even when you're 65. And
Yeah.
so this light bulb went off of you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And
Mm.
so I chose to live my life that way.
Mm.
And, of course, there were things that were challenging during my brain tumor journey. Like when you go through the nose, you lose your taste and your smell for a while. And um, uh, various things like that. I couldn't bend or lift over 5 pounds. So, I was basically doing nothing for so long. And
Mm.
those, like every day, I'm an active person. That was a challenge for me. But
Yeah.
those were temporary. And I think it was the perspective that I tried to focus on that, oh my goodness, I know now what can happen and how quickly it can change. And what am I going to do with this? What am I
Yeah.
going to do with this sort of knowledge and perspective now?
Yeah. Yeah. Hearing you speak, I had this image of a stepping stone on your path. It doesn't feel like this thing that's blocking out the sun, which it may do for some people, but I've got this image of you walking along. Okay, I wasn't expecting that stone to be there. There it is. Okay, and on across I go. Is really amazing to hear the way you thought about it, and I think that is so inspiring for anyone listening to that. And I agree with your husband that I think sharing that on TV. What was the response like when you shared that with the general public?
It was not negative whatsoever, like my
Right.
mind told me it could be. It was, incredibly positive,
Mm.
and it was people who, I would say 2 things happened. One, I had no idea there was this giant community of people who had been through, um, brain tumor surgery,
Mm.
anything in the brain sphere, and those people all found me. They were people who had had my surgeon, they were people who had a diagnosis and were actively contemplating surgery. Some of them found my surgeon through me, and then there was this other subset of people, which was the general public who had been through everyday challenges and knew what it was like to go through something tough, and they showed their
Mm.
support in ways. And so, not to get too far ahead, but as I have shifted from news to speaking, that's become a really big catalyst for what I now talk about is
Mm.
community because I had no idea that sharing this would create this community, not
Yeah.
only for myself, but for other people. Because when we talk about and admit some of our vulnerable, toughest moments, you
Mm.
realize you're not alone and you realize that other people have been through it and they don't have to go through exactly what you've been through, but there's just some um, comfort, right?
Yeah.
And knowing that everyone has been through something tough and that if they've made it out, so can I.
Yeah. It's that thing, isn't it? It creates a connection, and I can imagine people finding comfort, like you said, in it. So you've said it's like I can hear you sort of growing into it as you speak. You said that you went from surviving to thriving, and I guess you're going through the treatment. But was there an internal shift that allowed that to happen? Was there any sort of belief or identity that you had to let go of on that journey?
I would say what's transpired since 2021 has been a steady shift in creating a stronger version of myself. So
Mm.
it was a recognition that it's okay. I'm not that old version of me, and I can create a new version. And what
Mm.
does that look like? And how is that tied to my career and motherhood and what I've been through? And so that process, I think, has taken me a while. And that wasn't something that happened necessarily in the moment of the first brain surgery. I would say that's something that I've been able to gain perspective on as I get further and further away from those 2 surgeries, and, as I have kinda moved past that time of
Mm.
struggle, I would say.
Yeah. So for now and moving on, like how do you listen to yourself now, your body, your intuition, compared to before all of this happening?
A big part of my story from the very beginning was just my gut feeling that I knew something was wrong. I had been
Mm,
having headaches when I was 29 before I was diagnosed, and I had been in and out of my primary care doctor's office, and we had tried everything that he could think of, and nothing was working. And
mm.
so as a woman, you are often there are many reasons to explain headaches.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just knew I just knew this nagging feeling like no one has a headache for 3 weeks, and it's just continuing and continuing.
Mm,
And so that persistence and really advocating for myself, I eventually went in my doctor's office and I said, "I want a scan. Let's just rule out the worst case scenario. Let's just rule it
yeah.
out." And, there was some resistance, like, I mean, it's gonna be expensive, number 1. Eh, who I doubt anything's gonna come from it, but if you really wanna do that, like, we can do it. And so I'm like, "Yeah, I really wanna do it." And so that intuition is how we found the brain tumor.
Wow.
I had no symptoms other than, just, the headaches and a very, very later I would figure this out. I had a very slight vision delay, but it was so subtle that I couldn't even describe it to you.
Mm,
Um, and so those are things that, sometimes send people into a panic, like, "Well, I have headaches, could I have a brain
yeah.
tumor?" And
Mm,
that's not what I'm saying. Most people's headaches aren't an indication of a brain tumor,
mm,
but for me, headaches have always been an indication that something is wrong.
yeah.
And so I listened to that, I advocated for myself, and I still do that to this very day.
Mm,
Anytime I have a question, I reach out to my doctors. I am the first person to try to get my doctor's cell phone numbers, which if they ever listen to this, they'll laugh at that. Because I mean, you're you should feel safe, supported, and, cared for. That is, you know, along with experiencing their expertise, like, and so, um, I believe that, and, that's truly, like, the role my doctors have taken. I have had an incredible team
mm,
support me.
mm. That's amazing. How long do you think it was from when you went to the doctor, "I'm having headaches," right, to actually getting the scan done? Was there a time in that you can remember?
Yeah, it was several weeks I was having headaches, probably 3 or 4 weeks,
Mm,
and I got the scan so in 2021, it was, like, the end of June.
mm.
And, I got the results that same day. I was on the Peloton, doing a workout, and my doctor just called and said, "We found a tumor in your head.
Wow.
Um, you're gonna be referred to neurosurgery, and they'll call you." I'm like, "Well, that doesn't really do it for me. What do you mean? Who's calling me? When are they
Yeah.
calling me? How soon can I get in?" And, that kind of, started the process.
I'm just thinking without your persistence, could it have grown? Was it something that would have just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger?
It was a type of tumor. It was a cyst, actually. So,
Yeah.
this type of tumor had been with me since I was a cell. I mean, essentially, it was
Wow.
a skin cell that,
Yeah.
landed in my cavernous sinus in my head and multiplied, over the years. And
Mm,
so that to me also sharpened the perspective of like, "Are you kidding me? How have I had this growing in my head for
yeah.
29 years and I had no idea and I had no symptoms?" And that is crazy, and,
Mm,
on the spectrum of, like, brain tumors, probably one of the better diagnosis,
yeah.
that you could get, but it was a type of tumor where they couldn't fully remove everything like that
Yeah.
because it was so close to all these very important structures. So, my carotid artery, my main blood supply to my head, my
Mm,
pituitary gland.
yeah.
So that was a concern and optic nerves. So we knew like even if we had the surgery, we would still continue to have a relationship with my doctor because it could manifest in different ways over the course of time. But
Right.
even though here I am on this side of it, right? I've had 2 surgeries and there is no guarantee I won't ever have to have another, but there's
Mm,
also nothing telling me that I will have to.
yeah. and you get to choose how you think about that, right? So, we move on a bit to you've been through all of this. Like what a journey. We get to 2024 and you make another big decision.
So, Kelly, if I could back up one before I
Mm,
leave,
yeah, yeah,
in 2023, so this is about 18 months after,
yeah.
my surgery, I started having these headaches again,
Oh,
and I was pregnant. So, as a
oh,
pregnant person, you know
yeah.
that there are minimal things you can do. What transpired was I was essentially home for half of my pregnancy with these debilitating migraines. And
Mm,
we were in touch with my doctors. We ended up doing some scans because the headache,
yeah.
again, was always the indicator for me that something was wrong.
Hmm.
And we ended up continuing to monitor the headaches. But what happened was I was pregnant when my right eyelid just shut out of nowhere. So, my right eyelid shut was a new symptom. They started, they were concerned it was a life threatening situation. And I was in and out of the doctor. I went on leave from my news job and just kind of went dark. I didn't say anything. I just, had to figure out what was happening at hand because now
Mm,
I had this baby growing inside of me.
yeah,
I was in a position where I was making decisions about, scans and what medicine could I take for this headache,
yeah.
yada, yada. And every decision I made was life or death. And so what happened was the doctors got me through pregnancy. I gave birth early to a happy, healthy little baby girl,
Yay.
who we named Jane.
Yeah.
And my eye, after I gave birth, I ended up having this sort of like, if there's a checklist of 3 boxes, all 3 were checked. And I was having the eye was shut, my pupil was dilated and not responding to light. And it was as my, if you, like, put a when you do an eye vision test where they
Mm,
move like a pen across the front, so, like,
yeah,
that they did that test on me and, like, only one eye was tracking.
yeah.
So those 3 things gave the doctors indication that I was having what's called a complete third nerve palsy, and so 2 weeks after the birth of my daughter, I went in for a second brain surgery,
Wow.
and what happened was there was a slow growing infection in that area that we
Right.
didn't know about
Yeah,
until they would eventually go in, and
yeah,
so that second sort of wave before the second brain surgery was even more difficult in different ways because I was growing a sweet baby girl and had to make a lot of tough decisions
mm,
and didn't know if I could return to my job. I didn't know what my identity was going to be because
yeah,
I had one of my eyes open.
mm,
So my identity took the back seat for a while. We were in
yeah,
survival mode.
yeah,
Um, And I returned to work about 4 months after that second brain surgery. So, I returned to the anchor desk. I my anchor team at the time, welcomed me with open arms. My eye had opened by that point. We were grateful that that was my outcome, and I thought, like, "This is exactly where I wanted to be." I wanted to prove it to myself that I could go back, that
yeah,
I could, do what I love to do and be back with, my team and informing the community, um, until it wasn't. And you talk
yeah,
about a shift in identity, and I think
mm,
that's that second, surgery and what I went through, having a baby and just this duality of, I was facing death at the
yeah,
very moment I was also bringing life into this world, and that
yeah,
can change things really quickly.
yeah. Thank you for explaining that,
Yeah.
incredibly important part of your journey. Because I just wanted to acknowledge as well, even without, the harrowing brain stuff, having a child, I'm a mum, shifted my identity on a level that I didn't know was possible. You don't know what you don't know, right? And in my mind, trying to manage that alongside, brain surgery and this very real risk is, yeah, I can only imagine. I always say, I think, the responsibility as a mum starts when you're pregnant.
Mhm.
Um, and you're weighing that with, okay, well, can I have this surgery? What does it mean? Will it impact, my child? Like that is massive. That's absolutely massive. And how was it when she was born? So you said she was born early? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
so I had the headaches when I was pregnant, and then
yeah,
my eye basically half of my pregnancy, my eye would open and shut,
yeah,
so it would just, like, droop closed, and
yeah,
then I could take steroids, that was, like, one of the few things I could take, and then it would open, and
mm,
so I was, fortunate when I had Jane,
yeah,
my eye was open, and I had this sweet baby girl, and then it was, like,
mm,
within hours, my eye shut again.
oh,
So, I gave birth at 37 and a half weeks, so it wasn't
okay,
crazy
yeah,
early, and thank
yeah,
God I gave birth early because who really wants to do it for 40 weeks?
yeah, yeah,
Um, but it was just this huge silver lining in all of this, like, they just kept
yeah,
telling me, "We gotta get you through to delivery, we gotta get you through to delivery,"
yeah,
and that was a time where, like, mentally, I had just hunkered down and, like, survival was key.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I was just in bed most days because of this, like, debilitating head pain, and I couldn't
mm,
see, and I couldn't drive, and I couldn't work, and,
yeah,
yeah, throw into that, like, how do you prepare and nest your home and do all these fun things, as
mm,
you prepare for a baby,
yeah,
but I never thought, like, this is my reality forever. I knew it was temporary, and I do think that, um thank God, because I think my doctors were, like, now constantly screening me for,
mm,
depression or just like, "What are you doing? Are you getting out for walks? Are you listening to meditation?" Like, those kind of
mm,
questions because they
yeah,
just knew, like, "It's not you're not gonna be here forever, but we gotta get you through to the other side."
yeah. And what better inspiration or willpower to keep going now that you've got Jane?
Mm,
I wanna see this little girl. I wanna be around to experience her. And so you'd gone back 4 months after you'd had Jane. This is where I wanna be. But then actually, no. You decide
mhm.
that it's time to leave and, launch Suzanne Speaks, like what so was it the end of the treatment that you thought, "Right, okay, this is it. I need to make the change."
I think I was so focused, my identity was so wrapped up in TV that I
Yeah.
I wanted to go back and prove it to myself. And what happened was over the next year, so now this is like, 2024 summer to 2025 summer, and I worked
Mm,
and I just kept having this feeling of there's got to be something more to this. You don't go through all this,
mm,
live to tell it. Like this is incredible that I've survived and what can I do with this? And so what it honestly took from me, the practical you know, I say I'm practical, but I have, like, 65 pairs of shoes. Um, my husband and I sat down with a whiteboard, and he was just like, "No job is ever gonna be perfect." The reality was I was waking up at 2 in the morning every day, 5 days a week for this
yeah,
morning show job, which was amazing, and I loved working in the mornings with being part of people's day, like, that was the
yeah,
best part of the day.
yep,
Love my team, but we had a couple of things happening. One, I had this pull to do something else, and two, my husband travels for work sometimes. And so we were in a position where constantly we were in a conundrum. Like he was gone. I had to leave for work at 2 a.m. How are we going to do this with a baby? Like how do we
mm,
create a reality where this isn't like we're relying on a babysitter family to come in? And so we got out the whiteboard, we took inventory of our finances and said, okay, we could do this where you leave to start something new, for X amount of years. This is a
mm,
runway that we could do, and so my husband said, "Would you look back at this time in your life and wish that you had done something different? Used your
Wow.
experience in a different way?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think I would." And so made that decision and went to work the next day, went in my general manager's office and said, "I wanna be more present at home. I wanna leave, break my
Mm.
contract," which is kind of frowned upon.
Yeah.
And that led to a series of rather quick decisions on their parts, like, "Okay, we hear you. You know, are you leaving for another TV job?" "No." "Okay." So that's their main concern, as long as you're not, like, leaving for another TV job.
Right.
I just didn't know what my next steps would look like. So,
Mm.
I left TV and took a few months to enjoy life with my husband and my daughter, and then really, it was like fall of 2024 that I really got going on my business and what that could look like. And I would say for me, one thing that I was being tapped for a lot when I worked um, on TV was sharing my story. People were
Mm.
always reaching out to me like, you know, "You inspired me on my journey. Would you be able to MC this event? Could you be our keynote? Survive and thrive" was the theme.
Mm.
And I loved doing that, and I just thought like, "Man, here I am introducing all these speakers in the community to talk about whatever they're talking about. Like, I could do that. I have that is I have that story, and I have
Mm.
the skills to do that." And so, it just took me some time to figure out what does that look like? How do I create this business,
Mm.
in a way that can also make money? And, um, so that's kind of when things really started to kick off.
Mm. Mm. And so what does that look like? Because you've taken what happened to you and you've really turned it into work that serves other people. What feels most meaningful about that, and how does it look for you now?
For me now, I just gave a speech last Friday, and I received an email later that night from someone who was in the audience, and she said, "I was just so inspired hearing your talk, what you went through, because it made me realize I'm not alone. I'm not alone in the challenge that I'm facing." And she went on to, like,
Wow.
tell me what she's going through, and it was just one of those moments where it's like, "Man, this is exactly what I wanted. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be, where I'm still
Yeah.
impacting people in a meaningful way, but I'm able to use my story and sort of these lessons learned in a way that can inspire others to be their best selves."
Mm.
So, I launched Suzanne Speaks, which primarily right now is, a public speaking business. So, I am a keynote speaker.
Mhm.
I'm speaking at different events, and the goal is to grow it, to do
Yeah.
this across the country, and or maybe internationally,
Mm.
and to eventually broaden kind of the scope of the services I offer. But for me, the first kind of like big check mark on the list was speaking. I wanted to develop a keynote speech
Yeah.
that was impactful and repeatable and could be beneficial to both groups of people who, work for the same company or for um, people who really just a wide gamut of industries, professions. I wanted to create a speech that could be beneficial to people to improve their mindset,
Mm.
their inner voice, that voice they're always listening to, and their
Yeah.
community.
Yeah. I honestly believe that international would be an easy step for you because your story is it doesn't have boundaries, there aren't borders, I guess, in what you've experienced. It's so relatable, to people who are struggling. I was just wondering, for women or anyone listening to this who is stuck in a situation which might feel intolerable, and that may be illness or work or even something quieter than that, and they don't know what comes next, what would you say to them?
I would say that um, I would say anything is possible. Anything is possible when you have the right mindset. And for
Mm.
me, a big part of my journey was choosing to not see the negative in my diagnosis.
Right.
It was choosing to see my diagnosis as an asset and actually has improved my ability to um, develop my toolbox
Yeah.
of skills when I'm on the speaking stage. So, for anyone listening, I think that whatever position you find yourself in, your mindset is a ticket out of feeling stuck. Changing your mindset can dramatically transform your reality. And it can also transform the people around you, which the people around you, I think, are crucial when you're looking to make a big change
Mm.
because no one can do it alone. And
No.
when you start to look at the people and the voices around you and what are they saying to you and are they encouraging you? Are they
Mm.
supporting you? Are they the first ones to cheer your name when you make a do something good? Or are they the first ones to say, why are you doing that? Um,
Mm.
and question what you're doing. And so I think entrepreneurship for me has really taught me a lot about my inner circle,
Yeah.
who I'm surrounding myself with, and surrounding myself with people who are like minded in that way and are supportive,
Yeah.
but also who have that similar mindset where they see challenge as opportunities for growth
Yeah.
and that. Pressure isn't something to shy away from. It's actually something to embrace and to hold and to use it as fuel.
Mm. Mm. I think what you've experienced it's really, this is my mortality, right? That you're reckoning with. And from this point now, with what you've experienced, when you look ahead, what feels possible for you?
It's funny, I'm so focused on Suzanne Speaks and growing this little business of mine and getting the reps of speaking
Yeah.
that I know that, um, nothing is forever, and so what I'm focused on, I think, right now is just finding a way to make an impact in what I'm doing, and so for
Yeah.
me, that's speaking, it's writing a book. I'm writing a book right now,
Wow.
and one of my author friends said to me, "You've been given a big fat gift of the from the universe." And I'm like, "It's so true," because,
Yeah.
I got this life-changing perspective, I think, at such a young age, and a lot of people don't have career shifts or major, you know, um, moments like this, maybe
Mhm.
health-wise or when their kids go off to school, or you just kinda question what you've always been doing maybe
Absolutely.
until later. And so I feel fortunate that I have a lot of like working years ahead of me to hopefully capitalize on being able to use these, the broadcast skills that I worked
Yeah.
so hard to hone in on and kind of
Mm.
couple that with this like life changing perspective. So I don't know what's next to answer your question, but I'm just doing one day at a time um, and enjoying some days a little bit more with my daughter, who's now 3 years old.
Oh,
And yeah,
great
she
age.
is just, yeah, it is a great and emotional and just a crazy age, right? The house is a
Yeah.
mess.
Yeah.
But what a great thing to be able to experience more of her childhood and be with her,
Mm.
um, and also grow my business. So
Yeah.
it's been a wonderful transition.
Yeah, it's like I'm hearing, "I don't know what's next," and that's really exciting. "I don't know what's coming," with a big smile. Yeah, it sounds exciting. I just wanna say, Suzanne, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with me. I just had another quick thought then. You getting that email from that lady, there are the countless people that you don't hear from who have an impact, and that's affecting their mindset, and then that's gonna impact their relationships. So your story, I think, is gonna go far beyond the room of people, because if it improves somebody's mindset, that's probably gonna have a positive impact on the people around them. So I think there is huge, huge power in what you're sharing, and I've loved speaking to you today, and I look forward to hearing more, and I will share all of your information with everyone in the show notes about Suzanne Speaks and where they can find you and hear more. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. I think that I have always had people who believed in me from an early age, and that carried me through journalism, and it carried me through into this new career,
Mm.
carried me through health problems. And so I think believing in people is such a powerful gift. And I'm just so grateful that you saw something in my story, and your viewers hopefully will get something,
Mhm.
listeners will hopefully get something out of it too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Stepping Off the Path. Suzanne's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes we don't choose the turning point, but we do get to choose how we meet it and what we build from it. What I'm taking from this conversation is the way Suzanne holds both truths, that nothing is guaranteed and that a meaningful life is still available, one day at a time. And I want to leave you with the question Suzanne and I landed on at the end. When you look ahead now, what feels possible for you? Even if it's small, even if you don't know exactly how, even if you're still in the middle of it. You can find Suzanne and her work at Suzanne Speaks. I'll share all the links in the show notes. If this episode resonated, you're welcome to share it with someone who might need it or leave a review. It helps these conversations reach the women who are quietly looking for a different way. Until next time, take care.